This is Jill Matson, and I'm excited to talk about and share ideas of using different dimensions in and among us to increase our consciousness, awareness, strength, power, and to give us an incredible multitude of benefits, opening up worlds to us. So here we go. At first, I'm going to have a medium small lecture, and the remaining part of the course will be a tremendous amount of hands-on exercises and tools that can alter your life, empower yourself. We're so much greater than we ever thought we were. So here we go, beginning with talking about dimensions. What are dimensions? When I think of dimensions, I think of science classes and scientists doing blackboards full of mathematics and showing proofs for dimensions, and it's quite abstract. Or if I go to metaphysical information, dimensions are presented more like places where angels and ascended masters reside. So where do we start? I decided to start at the dictionary. They describe dimensions as measurements in one direction. They're one of four coordinates determining a position in space and time. Well, that was Webster, and wasn't terribly insightful to me. So let's get down to it and make it really easy and simple. What do we know about dimensions that's very accessible? We know that a dot on a piece of paper is the first dimension. And if we draw a line, that represents the second dimension with an infinite number of dots on that line that could go forever, theoretically. We know that 3D would be more like taking that piece of paper and folding it and making a paper house. It has height, width, and depth. And fourth dimension, science would say, has the element of time. And I'd like you to think of time as an energy, as a thing. Something that's somewhat movable, like other energies. Okay. So if we could pretend that we were a dot, we might think that we're all that is, but whether or not we perceived it doesn't matter. We still could be a dot on a line, on a piece of paper, that was molded into a house that lasted over time. So if our consciousness is just that of a little dot, we're surrounded by four dimensions right there, and all that information and stuff that's going on, it's right there. We're in the middle of it. It is us. We're just not necessarily aware of it. If you look way back at the way that we evolved on Earth, you'll see that very, very early on, sight was not an ability that was as developed as it is today. At first, we saw only a fraction of what we saw. We perceived light, and then began to develop maybe a little bit more depth. But millions of years later, we also have width. Height and depth and width was always with us. It was only a matter of whether or not we saw it or intook those frequencies, that information or that wave information. So therefore, I'm suggesting that we see a pattern here. First dimension, second dimension, third dimension, fourth dimension, which begs fifth dimension, sixth dimension, And mathematically, science has confirmed, I believe it's up to maybe 11, 10 or 11 dimensions mathematically. So when we talk about dimensions, about it being kind of either far out there, maybe over our heads mathematically, or I don't know, maybe superstitious if you don't really subscribe to metaphysics and you don't like the idea of thinking about the realm of angels or masters or higher beings. But just look at it in terms of what we do know with the dawn, the first dimension, the second dimension, and the third dimension. You can see that dimensions are something that are all around us. That dot has accessibility to it all. It's not a matter of whether or not the dimensions are here. Just do we have awareness and can we access that information? So in a way, I'm saying that dimension is a wave information pool, something like that. Now I'm going to look at dimensions, and I don't even know if dimension's the right word anymore, but I'm going to look at other little wave pools that perhaps with a stretch could be considered like a dimension. Think about a group of people that all think alike. If you're with a bunch of athletes, they have a certain way of thinking, that excelling has to do with excelling your physical abilities. You go to a bunch of students, and there the definition of excel is your intellectual accomplishments. So it's almost like they're different worlds. It's a different world, a different way of thinking in the locker room at gym than it is in the physics lab. And I'm suggesting that the way people think and feel, the way they use their free will, these emotions are not separate because we're all energy. And if we get a whole panel of people that think alike, we create like a matrix. Perhaps think of it like we create a harp or we tune a harp. String theory, let's say it's correct. And in the locker room at gym, they have a tuning. It's a way of thinking and a way of feeling. When you walk into that gym, it's easy to go with the flow and think like the athlete. Likewise, if you're in Princeton University, it's easy to value and take the steps and feelings about learning that other students have. Kind of like little mini dimensions right here on Earth that we are accustomed to and go in and out of, access information, and understand just what is a dimension. It's hard to go against the flow when you go into a place where everybody thinks and feels and acts the same. Very hard. Okay. In science, they use the word brain, short for membrane, and it's a theory that all universes have their own brains or their own rules of physics in different dimensions. So a parallel world could include different dimensions, maybe the fifth or the sixth, and have different types of physics, different types of way that everything operates. And that's kind of what I'm suggesting in a very oversimplified way that we have experienced on a much smaller scale. Okay. Back to my idea that wave pools are like thought, feeling, and actions groups of people, like a tribe, that does everything together and identifies together, moves together, acts together. When you have a tribe, everybody's singing the same song, every now and then someone thinks a little differently. You know, there's got to be a black sheep in every crowd. And we are in the world of duality. So every choice that we make, eventually we see a positive and negative attribute of it. So eventually people change their minds, and maybe one person thinks differently, maybe the kids think differently because they haven't been so well indoctrinated. And then as more of them do, it's like the tuning the world, the era. It's like the Victorian era, just kind of smorfs and retunes right into the early roaring 20s. So I'm suggesting that in a dimension or matrix that frequencies are pliable and can be morphed. I'm just thinking of John Lennon and a quote from him. A dream you dream is only a dream. A dream you dream together is reality. Kind of blending the realms between reality and what it is that we all think and feel and do. Okay. In essence, like John Lennon, we're suggesting that a perspective is one person's view. But when the perspective is the same as 98% of what everybody else thinks, then we've established a frequency matrix, a group thought, perhaps a little mini dimension. And the more people that get entrenched in this way of thinking, the stronger it gets, the harder it is to break through with a new idea. When you look at history and you see the heroes are those who thought differently, those who were condemned for thinking differently but held on. And over time, they were able to introduce to the rest, this is a better way. Let's try this. And it's those people that are honored because it's hard to flow against the stream. It's really hard to sing a different song when your harp is tuned in a somewhat inflexible appearing way. So, examples might be, when I was younger, I always thought of health as chemistry, going to the doctor and getting a pill. I didn't know any better. Now, I think of health in terms of subtle energy, uh, acupuncture, doing exercise, qigong, how I eat. I think of health in terms of magnetic energy, the magnetic energy of an electrical energy. What about my cell phone exposure, etc. So I think of health in so many more dimensions, perhaps, than I used to. I'd like to suggest that chakras, in this very loose definition of dimension, are almost dimensions too. I'd like you to think of our world in terms of all possible emotions as being able to split and fall into the category of one or more chakra. Root is being grounded. Your yellow solar plexus is confidence. Green heart, feeling love. Speaking, communicating. Third eye, etc. And emotions and health issues as well relate to one of these chakras. Kind of a cool thought that we are combined of multicolored dimensions, like subsets of information and way of thinking. Okay, so I'm going to do a little sum up, and I'm not going to talk long because in about 5-10 minutes we're going to go right into exercises which are more fun than listening to me talk. So, but I do have a little bit more. I just kind of want to get into a little bit of science and some of the things that they suggest, theory-wise, about other dimensions. They suggest that time belongs to the fourth dimension, and time is somewhat elastic. It's, I like to imagine it as a bigger wave that's we don't notice the changes because we're so small in comparison to the wavelength. That's just me, my little way of thinking. But science does suggest that the fourth dimension is a little less dense than the third dimension. And so manifesting would go quicker, etc. And science suggests that energies from future and past might also reside in the fourth dimension, whereas third dimension is present. I'm just reading out of a science book. Fifth and sixth dimension deal with future possibilities. Now this is metaphysics, not science. But quantum physics does say that there are any number of possible futures, and they suggest that the outcomes are based on free will. There's that famous experiment about thought experiment about Schroeder's cat, saying that you could have a cat in a box, two boxes, and you wonder whether or not the cat is dead or alive. And they're saying that what you think, what you expect, has everything to do with the outcome. There's many things in science said that if you observe a particle, perhaps it's there, but if you don't observe it, it's unmeasurable, you don't see it. So that the role of the observer, what we think and feel and do, has a lot to do with what manifests out there. Therefore, the fifth and sixth dimensions would reveal, since it has information about future or past, would reveal the outcome of choices that we make now. And I'd like you to think about that. I remember a couple high school friends that fell madly in love and were just so brokenhearted when it didn't work out. And later, in midlife, I'd meet them and they were like, whoosh, oh, thank God. I could have married that so-and-so and so-and-so. Oh, I'm so lucky I didn't get what I wanted. And I know other people that have gotten what they wanted. I've had the same reaction, like, oh, I wish I skipped this. So one of the things that we're going to do in this course is we are going to skip that. We're going to kind of ride the dimensions and take a look at the energy and feelings, information from higher dimensions and see what's the outcome of what it is that we want before we make our observation and manifest it in our world. Back to science. It says that 7th through 10 dimensions deals with universes. They're suggesting, this is a theory, that some have their own reality and possibly their own outcomes. Okay. First exercise. We talked about there being like maybe mini bubbles of consciousness, calling it loosely dimensions or group thought, something like that. We assume that we can't communicate with different species, such as an ant, a bee, an angel, if you want to get metaphysical, or a plant. But I think that we have those abilities. We just forgot that we have those abilities. And we're going to try it right now. I have two plans, and I'm going to show them to you. Okay. Here's a little beautiful primrose. Now, I want you to just imagine, use your imagination, and don't doubt. Whatever you imagine, stick with that. What do you think this beautiful little flower thinks, feels? Maybe not thinks, feels. I feel that it's healthy, it's happy, it would like more attention, it loves to please. I feel like it's a sweet flower, very sweet. Okay. And I feel like it's, I don't know. I don't feel like it's a baby. I feel like it's a mature plant. Now here is another primrose. Now, don't rely on me. What do you feel about this plant? What does this plant feel like? Use your imagination. And perhaps stop the video and just look at the plant. And what do you feel? Look at the plant and what does it feel? It feels like, the flowers are gone, but the roots are still healthy. It has lost its sweetness, though it still has some vitality. It's not as light and fluffy feeling. It's like it's lost its rose, its bloom. But there's a definite different feeling between these two primroses. I'm suggesting that the feeling you feel around each primrose is the energy of the flower. And in that way, if you just tune into your feelings when you focus on something else, you tune into their consciousness. You can open up worlds. You can get a signal or a communication from a plant or another species. It's just a matter of paying attention, opening up, and trusting. So that's kind of cool. Just showing a couple of ideas. We talked about chakras and how they were perhaps our world divided into 7 dimensions. This is Cosmic Streams, a CD compiled from 11 different mystery schools, ways of empowering your chakras. I put in the tones of the chakras and all kinds of things associated with the chakra. Like if the chakra is associated with a flower, then the frequency of the flowers in it. If it's associated with a crystal, then you can calculate the frequency of that crystal. If it's associated with a color, you can translate that into a musical tone. If it's associated with an element, I'm playing the element. If it's associated with a Tibetan bowl, it's in the background. If it's associated with an organ in your body, I'm tuning that organ. So it's a very powerful way to tune your chakras, almost on many different levels and dimensions. Okay. Another way to do the same kind of thing, here's Deep Wave Body Healing CD. In this way, I'm suggesting that your body organs are like little wave pools, like your chakras, little bubbles of a world, like we're the universe, and this is just a world. Your liver, for example. Your liver is going to have a certain overall frequency, unhealthy, even unhealthy. It's going to have an overall frequency. It's going to have a frequency that exchanges information with a feeling. For example, if you worry a lot, a negative feeling, it's the same frequency as the lining in your tummy. And if you worry enough, you get a hole in your tummy. All that negative stuff goes from worry right down to your belly and changes the physicality. So there's an octave resonance or a link with each emotion and things inside your body. So if you feel very angry, you're going to store that in your liver. Whereas if you feel kind of beat up, that gets stored someplace else. If you feel suffocated, you store that in your lungs. So each organ has its own positive and negative feelings. It's like a little being. And in this CD, I have the frequencies of healthy organs, associated feelings, reminding you what the organ does, where it's located. So you can start to like tune in to this other species, if you will, meaning the consciousness of the spleen, and starting to recognize when it's happy and when it's not. And when it's not, how to feel the right emotions or listen to the CD and tune in. A kind of cool way of applying this information. Okay, I'm going to talk about expanding your consciousness. That's kind of what we were just talking about with the plants. And with the idea that each chakra is a different consciousness and each organ is a different consciousness. When you meditate and when you think of higher dimensional beings like Archangel Michael or Saint Germain, you link with them just like you linked with the plant. And when you were focusing on giving attention to observing the plant, you started to share information. You got feelings. We assume they're our own, but I'm suggesting no. This is a shared information with that consciousness. So when you share information with different angels and beings, you share their consciousness. You share their dimension. And it's like you're this little line, and maybe your whole world is just the line, but then someone takes you and folds you into a paper house, and then all of a sudden you start noticing how things change over time. You're just kind of expanding your consciousness to what's around you, and suggesting that meditating on higher beings helps you to open that vision and that sight, your attention, your consciousness, your focus. And another tool, and sound you can use again and again. It's so accessible, so powerful. You can even sleep with it. On the CD, Contacting Angels and Masters, this one right here, I talk about the correlations mathematically between your emotions and colors, your thoughts and feelings, colors, your health issues with colors, and ascended masters and angels. So you can almost see the portals between, let's say, the frequency of worry and your stomach. So you start to learn that for your whole body. Where are some of these exchanges go? What are the big ones? And I have a rainbow garden in there that's a way of tuning up, opening up your consciousness and awareness for the dimensions around you to expand your world. There's a garden of the rainbow, one of the tracks in this CD, and I have music and the key signature of pink, orange, yellow, green, indigo, blue, and violet. And I talk about the benefits of those colors, and I channel the angels and masters of those colors. I also have their frequencies and all kinds of frequencies for healing, generic healing in the background. So it's another way to open up and expand your consciousness. Okay, I'm just going to take a little break here and we'll be back.